Tower Factory. What a fun way to do a tower defense game. Now, in the roguelike world, we've seen a lot of different, I would say, quote-unquote, attempts at making tower defense roguelikes. I think, once again, it's really hard because it kind of goes against a lot of the principle of roguelikes, which is, generally pretty fast-paced gameplay, even if it's strategy-based, just because the idea is you're going to be restarting from scratch, so you want things to pick up quickly, while tower defense games tend to be very slow-paced, kind of mechanical. There's a lot of them out there, and I think a lot of them have really different ways of dealing with this issue. Some do it better than others. And Tower Factory also takes it in a different angle. So let's talk about it. First off, charming visuals and audio, obviously, as well. I love the cute, simple 3D art here. Naturally, you can see it's not a crazy sophisticated, but one really, really cool aspect is not necessarily the art, but the fact that you have full control of the camera, and then you can zoom in and zoom out and move around, look at the different angles of anything in the game. And when you really zoom in into some of these enemies, they're actually kind of cute. They're pretty funny. I actually really do enjoy just zooming in and just seeing the action up close in a 3D environment. I think it works very well in being able to really see everything very clearly if you choose to do so. In terms of the music, I like the music. It's very cozy. It's fairly simple and chill for the most part, which makes sense because, you're just building stuff. You're not controlling a character. You're not trying to be immersed as a hero. No, you're just slowly building an entire factory around your tower. And when enemies attack, you've got this cool little, slightly more action, more suspenseful music without it being too out there, taking you out of context and taking you out of the whole vibe. I think it's quite fitting. So obviously, daytime and nighttime, making sure that nighttime is, careful, is very prominent in the music. But yeah, I like the orchestra theme around it. I think that works quite well because it's a wide world. You're seeing an entire world. You're not just constricted to a little dungeon and everything. So I think it fits quite well. All right, so let's talk about the gameplay. Now, obviously, the gameplay is pretty specific here. You actually don't really do much other than just building things. And building things is obviously everything. You are also going to be sometimes clicking on resources and collecting chests scattered around the land, but the point is just build, creating an entire system to go to your tower. I mean, we could talk about this for a while. The specifics of how the gameplay works is really cool. And again, as someone who has not played Factorio but does know a lot about it, it definitely does make me feel like, first of all, that I would like Factorio, but I do also believe that if you like Factorio, I think you would like this game, because I think that it does go pretty deep, all things considered, considering the fact that, again, these are run-by-run games, so it's not like you can't just constantly be growing your crazy city factory because you are supposed to die eventually. So you can't go too crazy like Factorio, but I think the pacing is done extremely well. So when you start a very fresh file, you're gonna have your trees and your rocks around your main tower. You're gonna have to click on them, and then from there on you can start building little things that can cut them for you. Then you create conveyor belts to your tower, and then you just get more of that, and then you're like, cool, now I can get to the next resource farming, which are planks and stone. So you just need to grab some of this stone and some of this wood and bring them into a sawmill or something else, and then you get new resources, and those you also need to duplicate. And then when you have plenty of those, you can start going for other things. So, it's your usual thing, right? Like you start with very simple resources, and then you build towards the more complex ones as you get into the mid to late game. Now, one aspect I really like in this game is a lot of times games that's all about, mining and, collecting resources. Usually once you get to the point where you're in the mid to late game, you don't really come back to the old resources. You kind of scratch those. You don't need, I don't need copper anymore. I don't need gold anymore. Now I'm only going for diamond and platinum, that kind of stuff. That happens a lot in games, and I think it's kind of sad to just scrap everything from the past and only focus on the new stuff. It's just upgrade. In this game, not so much. I actually love the fact that you're always going to need the stuff from the beginning. every resource is going to be important throughout your entire runs. Now, obviously, it's not going to be as important as the beginning, right? The wood and rocks are extremely important at the beginning, but I do think that it's really cool to feel like you really have to keep track of everything. It's not just a matter of once you've gotten to this cap, you can scrap all the wood and all the stones, you don't care about them. I find that really exciting and really cool, and it really does make you feel like your entire city around your tower is building and is not just constantly going to be moving from one place to another. No, you're constantly just expanding and you're going to be using everything, and it gets really crazy, and I love that pacing element of it. Now, naturally, in this game, knowledge is key for the most part. I mean, just being able to be quick and understanding how many, woodcutters you need for a sawmill, and like if there's too much traffic in one conveyor belt, what do you do? How do you split those up? These, I think, is all about, just experience and just doing it more and more. And I like the fact that, I've been playing this game for about like 15 hours now, and I've gotten to every single run, I get to understand more and more about certain details that just make the flow of, gathering resources better and better and better. And the better I am at this, more likely I'm going to win. And I think that's really cool. There is just a skill element by just getting to understand how everything works in unison. And that's really been one of the most enjoyable aspects of the game to me. But the other really cool aspect of the game that I haven't talked about yet is the meta progression in Tower Factory. Now, if we go on the upgrades tab right here, you can see that there's passives. It's tier 1, there's tier 2, tier 3 coming soon. I should have noted this is in early access. This game is not fully out yet, but you can still get this current version of the game on Steam, and I would say that it is very enjoyable as is currently. I'm very excited for the rest. But this is one of those games where you don't really have to worry about, waiting for the full game to come out, because the upgrade system is super grindy in a way that I love. Now, a lot of times in roguelikes, where you have, meta progression, you do a couple run, you get a few upgrades, you do another couple run, you do upgrades, you get much more powerful, and then from there on, you get more and more and more upgrades, and it's just like, after a while, you just don't really care too much about what you grab here in terms of upgrades. Once you get to, like, a few hours in a roguelike, you're just going to be getting so much resources, you're just going to kind of randomly like, oh, I'm going to click this, I'm going to upgrade this, I'm going to upgrade this, I'm going to upgrade this. Here, that is not the case. Every time I get gold in this game, I have to pay so much attention and really think about what I want to upgrade, because the game overall is very slow, which makes sense considering it's not only a tower defense game, but also a Factorio-like. Talk about slow-paced games overall. Every time you do a run, you're going to collect a few gold, but enough to upgrade quite a few things. But it's really important to know what to upgrade, because these upgrades are extremely important considering that there's not too much to work with overall for a lot of the game early on. And when I mean early on, even after 10 hours, I'm only starting to work with tier 2. Now, you might think that's pretty boring. You only have this stuff to work with at the beginning. I don't think it's boring, because again, the way you move your tracks and having to figure out how things work, and just being more and more comfortable with splitting tracks and making things go underground, going from one place to another, and then having to move your resource gathering tools to another location because they're done with like clearing a tree or in a rock, stuff like that. All this is just by itself very fun and engaging, in my opinion. The game is enjoyable even with this, with the passives and the tier 1 stuff. Now, in terms of the towers, obviously, right now we've only been talking about the building aspect, but again, this is a tower defense game, and the tower defense mechanic is very minimalistic. It's definitely 80% Factorio, 20% tower defense, which again is the point of the game, right? Now, these upgrades are really going to significantly increase the power level of these towers. They might not look like it much, but right now, it goes from +4 base damage, +8, to also increasing the attack speed by a quarter or something like that. Considering that these flying cannons are going to be on your board and you're going to have like 6 of them for like an hour, these upgrades really go a long way. When you start a fresh file, you're not going to have any of this stuff, and you're going to be so weak, but you're going to just spend the time just learning how it works. And when you go to start a game, each night that you survive, you get a certain amount of gold, and then each level that you fully complete, you get a prized pool of gold. You can also find gold by exploring the whole map. So there's different ways of getting gold. But basically, when you first start, you're going to go to the Silent Meadows. And you're going to survive like 2 or 3 nights. You're going to get 3 gold, and you might find a few more gold scattered around. So you might get a total of 5, 6 gold. You're going to go back to your upgrades, and you can upgrade one of these things because they cost very, very low amount of gold. And you can start seeing the stuff later on is going to cost a lot. You're like, oh my goodness. But then once you start beating the runs, and you get to the next level, and everything is doubled, and then it doubles again, you might think that, oh, once you get to this point, you can just buy everything. But no, I think the upgrades somehow perfectly align with you being able to buy stuff and then get to the things that are more expensive, but also get to the levels that are going to give you equally the same amount of gold to buy all these things. You would say, well, yeah, naturally, that's how these things go. But I think it's actually hard to balance this kind of features in terms of making sure that the more you play, the more resources you get, but the more the upgrades get more expensive. Generally, that balance I find really hard to really do in a way where you don't get to a point where at the end you just don't care about what you upgrade because you're just so powerful, you have so many resources. Yes, they're more expensive, but who cares, right? A lot of times that's how at least I end up finding a lot of roguelikes, but not in this game. Every time I get an upgrade, I am excited because I feel like it could really change the next run I'm going to have, and it's going to allow me to find more and more coins and get to the next level, which takes a while because, once again, this game is hard and very slow. So it really does require patience, and it requires a lot of knowledge. And one thing I haven't really talked about is the level design. I'm going to dive more into the level design in just a moment, but overall, I will say that the different biomes that you unlock later on is so cool because they didn't really change too much, but without getting into too many spoilers, it actually does push you to have to change the way you play just because of how the resources are distributed completely differently. Basically, there's more trees, but they give less wood, and that changes everything. And it's so cool with just a simple change how differently I have to play the game, because now there's more trees which block the path of everything, but also I have to constantly be moving my wood cutting tools accordingly because I'm constantly cutting down all the trees. It's super cool. It's a really, really cool way to actually have interesting level design in a Factorio / tower defense game. I want to talk about the tower defense mechanics. So once again, the tower defense is very minimalistic. You do upgrade your towers, and that's really important. Basically, you're being constantly attacked by enemies. They get stronger and stronger. You are going to die unless you finish the level by finding the gems around the world, which is, you know, that's an interesting mechanic. But the towers itself, I wish there was a little bit more to the towers. Currently, the towers, you can't upgrade them during the runs. You can't really interact with that much. Now, usually when you look at most other tower defense games, you know, ones that really prioritize the tower defense mechanic, when you place a tower, the idea is you're going to upgrade them. Now, sometimes it's just upgrading their stats. Sometimes it's changing their forms. Now, I can see that currently it would be pretty hard to balance that and to put that into the game as it stands, because you can put like a lot of different towers in a tower defense game, and it's usually all your resources are just spent on towers, period. Here, since actually like 70% of your resources are not going to be on towers. I mean, the end goal is towers, right? But you also have to expand the world, and that costs a lot of resources. The idea is that you kind of just leave your towers on the side, and you shouldn't be thinking about it too much. And I get that. I understand why you wouldn't want players to have to think too much about things outside of just the resource management. You probably don't want to have too many technical things on the towers, but I still kind of wish there was something more I could do to my ballistas, something more I can do to my acorn cannons to make them feel a little different every now and then. Now, you can find those little glyphs throughout the world that do increase a stat of one of your towers, but it doesn't matter which tower it is put on, and that is a fun aspect of the game. I do appreciate that, but again, the tower itself doesn't change. It's just a glyph you can find throughout the world. So I kind of wish there was just a little something extra on the tower, maybe, but again, I understand that since there are different tiers, and naturally you're going to find more powerful towers just by getting better resources. I understand that. But yeah, it's just a little disappointing for me as a tower defense love. If they don't end up changing that, I completely get it. It's just an extra thing that I personally like. Now, one thing that I would like changed somehow, I also don't know how, is this whole pause mechanic. Oh man, it's so complicated because while you're playing, you can pause the game in order to just look around, like just take a breather, but you can't build during pausing. Which makes sense because you're constantly at the threat of enemies attacking you, and time is also a resource. The developer doesn't want you to just cheat your way out of having to deal with the night and day cycle, so naturally you can't build during pause. But it is rather frustrating because sometimes it's not a matter of like, oh, I want to spend like 10 minutes building stuff. It's more like, oh, I screwed up one of the aspects of like how one of the conveyor belts works, and I'm like, oh shoot, this is not working. Let me just move things around. But obviously I want to do this in pause mode because I have a lot of resources that are going on these conveyor belts at the time of me fixing things. And while I'm on pause mode, if I were to build the new path and like switching things around, that I wouldn't lose resources. But in real time, you kind of just lose resources that you have to build over just because you did a mistake, and you're going to do some mistakes here and there. I get it, oh, well, you get punished for doing a mistake, or, sometimes you have to lose a bit of resources here and there. It's not the end of the world. It's just a little bit frustrating, and even after 10 plus hours of playing this game, I still get in situations where I pause, and I'm like, oh shoot, I just want to move a little something, and I still try to build, and the game still stops me. My brain is still not 100% getting the fact that I can't build during pause every now and then when I just want to do a tiny adjustment here and there. So I don't know how they could fix that because I see why you can't do this, but it is a bit of a shame. Another aspect that I want to talk about is the actual level design. Now, I did talk about the difference between the first two biomes, but I want to talk about the overall arcing idea of you need to expand the world. If you could see the entire map, you would win instantly because you would grab the gems, which is what you need to do in order to win, and then you would click on the tower of the enemy, and then you would just launch your gems. That's how you win the game. So the whole point is not even towers, it's not even resources. The whole point is just expanding the map at the end of the day. Now, obviously, even though that's the goal of the game, that's not what you care too much about at the start or at the middle, or if at all, because sometimes I just want to build and not really want to win, because you still get coins for just clearing nights, right? So the idea is you stay alive as long as possible throughout as many nights as possible, and at the very last second you win the game. That's how you're supposed to collect as many coins, and that's really what's enjoyable. Now, I do like the exploration aspect. You have to use resources to expand the light. There are different towers that can expand the light in different ways. You're going to be using the same one for a while. Throughout the world, you're going to find a few things. Chests that give you resources, chests that give you gold, different resources that you can actually start using, like iron and coal. You're going to expand on the pathing of the monsters. You will find the gems to win, and then the little glyphs that I talked about that improve your towers. Now, that's it. And you might say, well, that seems like a lot. Yeah, I kind of wish there was even more to find, and I think that's something that they're probably going to expand on, hopefully. Currently, by the mid-game, if you've played a lot of runs, you don't really care about what you find. It's like, oh cool, a little chest and a little gold. It's nice to find gold. It definitely feels super rewarding because once again, you really do want to upgrade that upgrade tree, and that upgrade tree is gonna take a while to fully upgrade. So it's nice. I kind of wish there was a little bit more. One little detail I wish they could change was the fact that sometimes the border of the map is they don't show you where the border of the map is, which I get, you're supposed to explore, but sometimes you put a big pillar of light somewhere and then you realize you're at the edge of the map, and that was just kind of wasted, and that feels pretty terrible. So I wish that they would actually tell you where the edge of the map is. I don't care if like, oh, you're supposed to explore know where the edge is. I get it, but it's just more frustrating than anything else, personally. But overall, I like the level design. I do like the fact that you still find stuff, and every time I put a pillar of light, I am kind of excited to see what kind of resources there are. But I wish I could be even more excited to find something really, really unique that you only find once in the entire map, right? That kind of stuff would be super cool to find. One thing I want to kind of finish up on is note that this game is once again all about, building fast and knowledge and knowing how to do things. So I think one priority to the developers is going to be quality of life improvements. Now, currently the game feels pretty good. A lot of things like, feel natural, like moving, like designing a line, like moving things around. It's pretty good, but I want it to be kind of perfect for a game like this, where you're going to be constantly building things extremely quickly, and from afar, and like these little trails, and then like pulling this. I really hope that they're somehow going to just keep on improving automation, for like sometimes I'm trying to build a path, and sometimes I wish the computer would know what I'm trying to build, because I'm like, oh, well, obviously I don't want to go the opposite direction here. That makes literally no sense. Some automation, not automation that takes away from you having to, I don't want the automation to take away from, the skill, right? But I want some automation to take away from like unnecessary, like, oh, I have to press this button and this button in order to make these things collide. Like, a lot of this stuff is going to be really, really important for high-level players. I think early on that doesn't really matter. It does take a little bit to get comfortable with the controls, but I think that's fine. I really hope that that things are going to be easier and easier to build and to be able to make your pathing correctly. I want players that have the knowledge and skill to be rewarded, and to just do like things and then build this, and then I want things to be very, very fast. Now this could just be me, and currently I'm pretty fast, I would say, and it is pretty nice, but it would be even cooler if I didn't have to sometimes move certain things one direction. It's a very small thing, but I'm imagining that, especially in the late game where like you really have your entire map filled with like resources and stuff, I would imagine that this stuff needs to be really important. Currently, it's great, but I'm just hoping that it's going to keep on being great as the game progresses. I want to talk about some tiny little detailed notes that I wrote down. These are very small things, but I think that would definitely help improve the game in some ways. First off, I'd love to have more information about which of the sawmills and like stone things are building what. Sometimes when I have a lot of these things built, I don't know if I have most of them creating wooden planks or something else. I kind of wish there was information about that. I'd like to get like a little notification if things are just not moving. Sometimes you get the notification if you're out of trees and stuff, but you don't get the notification if you just accidentally have like one of your treadmills just going the wrong direction, and then like everything is stopped and you just don't see it because you have too much on the screen. That kind of stuff I wish was shown. I wish there was more stats at the end. I want to know how much damage my towers did. There is stats about how many enemies you killed and how much damage you did, but you don't care about that. You want to know how much specific towers did. I kind of wish I would know how much damage specific towers did and the amount of resources I've gathered specifically. I think that'd be great. It would be also really useful to have a top view. I did praise the game for having a lot of different angles, 3D and everything, but a top-down view would be pretty useful, especially in the second biome where there's a lot of trees and it can be hard to know if there's a particular path that I can take. So a top view would be really, really cool. Some towers, I wish their bullets were a little faster, because sometimes like the slowing enemy movement speed tower like lobs a bullet that takes forever to reach the enemy, and most of the time the enemy's just dead, which does not feel good. Also, bigger zoom. I want a bigger zoom out. Sometimes in the early stages when you start playing the game, that's not going to be an issue, but in the late game, I like to zoom out even more to see a huge view of everything I've done. That would be great. These kind of things are not going to be an issue as you get started. But yeah, so overall, in conclusion, I think Tower Factory is a really fantastic factorial light. But I think it's a really nice twist on that genre, and it feels great to just collect all these resources and create really cool towers around that. I would say that this is not an easy game for most people, I would say, because you have to, be comfortable with building, but you also have to be quick. There's always a sense of, timing. It's not like things go extremely fast in the first place, but there's still, a night and day cycle. The pacing is fantastic. I have not felt that kind of pacing in a game in a very long time. It feels very, very rewarding to clear levels and to get gold, and this is one of those kind of games where this sentiment I haven't felt in a long time, where I'm excited to see the next level. It's not just like, oh, once I've got the game, I could just clear a level, move on, clear a level, move on, clear a level, move on, I'm more powerful. No, like every level feels like a next step. And every upgrade feels so important. Everything feels very impactful in this game. And this could just be my experience. Maybe it was just because the pacing was absolutely perfect for the way I was playing. But honestly, I hope that you can also feel that way, that you get this experience, because it is extremely enjoyable. I really enjoy beating a level and getting rewarded with a bunch of gold that takes me to the next level. Realize I'm super under-leveled in comparison. Choose which one is better, to either go back to the old level again to clear it and get more gold, or try the new level and just get gold throughout different nights and get more information. It's a really nice twist. Things that I hope are going to be improved or added. Just again, more quality of life things, more information that I already talked about, more roguelike elements potentially. Once again, clearly this is not a very roguelike game in quotation, right? But I do think they can add a little bit more stuff throughout the actual map in order to kind of give a bit more of that sense without having to add too much more complexity. But I do think it'd be nice to just have more things to find, and potentially a little bit more stuff to do with the towers. But again, I could understand why they wouldn't want to go this route. So yes, once again, Tower Factory is in early access, so if you want to wait for the full release, I completely understand. But I will say, currently, with the pacing of this game, I don't think the need to wait for the full release to get a big portion of the experience, because it is very enjoyable as it is. But yeah, that's about it.